I'll close this.
We want to see you too, you know.
Can you still see my notes?
Yes.
Hey, you can?
Yes, take it away.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. It's an honor to be sharing with everyone today. I am Nehithau, a Woodland Cree through my mother, though my mother did whisper to me once due to the push of colonization, we're actually Swampy Cree from the southwest region of the Muddy Water. Though unfortunately someone discovered and renamed it the Hudson's Bay. You know that, yeah?
Okay, yeah. Go.
See my notes, right?
Hey.
Hey.
She can't see them.
Huh?
Go ahead. Natalie says she can't see, but I think maybe keep going.
Anyway, don't read my notes. Okay. Yeah, we're actually Swampy Cree from the southwest region of the Muddy Water, but someone discovered it and renamed it the Hudson's Bay. And my father is plain Cree, most likely from Papa's Chase. Yet also my uncle tells me we're also Navajo, descended from royal blood. I just want to point out how I did not utilize Cree in my introduction because my language was taken away from me, and I'm not one to pretend, as I'm too old and with too many Cree speaking friends to start learning now. I've been learning and working around social justice issues for 7 years, and one of the most important lessons I can give is one well known but still not given enough attention, which is to look for the story behind the story. My talk is about Canada, a judiciary system that perpetuates as it tries to resolve the very problems it created. I want to discuss language and the importance of context today. Still much of the discourse around social change is still framed in the wrong story. An historical example could be the cry of many settler nations for freedom and prosperity, which on this continent has always and only been realized through the impoverishment of Indigenous peoples and the hijacking of Indigenous sovereignty. Systemic racism is a hot topic. Where are we? Is a hot topic these days, but again, the wrong story is being told. And so the real lesson that can resolve the issue isn't even available to be learned. This is why I really appreciated the Writing Relations Invasion film screening event. The language in the film and panel discussion is one that truly reflects our story. Because although in some ways the treaties are something for our people to stand on in courts, we also have to realize that Canada has always been at war with us because our mere existence is a threat to its legitimacy. Upon reflecting on the use of hate in the title of this webinar, I thought how dangerous the narrative could be, because I don't believe anyone truly hates us, or that we hate anyone, except maybe Barney the dinosaur. We are the only human being. We are the human being, and natural law makes it impossible for the spirit being or the mechanical human to hate any other living being or thing that is essential to our survival, unless we are tricked into doing so, thus leaving us in confusion, and then we die. I think we can hate an action or reaction. We may hate a circumstance or the absence of circumstance, but it's against our laws to hate each other. And I feel the use of the word hate in these discourses as identifiers between each other might simply invoke reactions of hate, fear, and further division. Because our ancestors taught we are all related. My brother is I, and I am my brother. It would be likened to self-loathing, and the act of self-loathing only occurs as a result of external influences such as peer pressure and childhood trauma. I remember loving my father even though I hated what he did to our family, and how I hated that he was not the man I needed him to be. For years I thought I hated my dad, but nobody explained to me then how our people can be groomed for dysfunction. Get you while you're young, around the age of 4 or 5, and they'll create exactly what they want you to be. It wasn't until I got into this work and learning the history of colonization, I realized it was okay to love my dad because my hate was misinformed and misdirected. My hate started long ago in a series of documents called the Doctrine of Christian Discovery. I keep hearing our women say, "Where's our men? Where's our protectors?" Then I hear about one of our women, how she's trying to escape some of our men who continually bounce from gang life to prison life and back. There's still an overrepresentation of Indigenous people with homelessness and substance abuse. But the majority of organizations, including Indigenous ones, that are supposed to help our people are still using a colonizing language, one that says pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get back in that square peg hole. Largely, our people are not being healed or mentored to become mentors or leaders in the Indigenous community. We're still being told Canada is the only game in town and you have to play by its rule. You have to start at the bottom and work your way up in a system designed only for the strong capitalists to survive. This is often Indigenous people assimilating their own into a colonial construct when the language should be one of, no matter your stage in life, you have a responsibility to the people and to the land in accordance to our laws of delegitimizing these systems of economic slavery, poverty, and environmental toxification. Imagine the army of world changers if they had only a guaranteed basic income and the guidance and tools to become those mentors and entrepreneurs of the future, rather than simply dusting us off and throwing us back into a machine that ground us up and spit on us in the first place. Just a few years ago, I know we still had many Indigenous rehab centers operating with an archaic 12-step so-called 5% success rate methodology. They wouldn't even address historical or childhood trauma as they were not trained or certified to do so. Perhaps there's an area right there for experienced mentors. Likewise, we never resolve the issue of racism either we will never resolve the issue of racism until we recognize it for what it really is, an instrument of colonialism. I'm currently working on a documentary in which one question I'm asked to address is how racism is different to Indigenous peoples than that of newcomers. Well, basically, racism against Indigenous peoples is a culture of multiple nations, particularly European Christians, perceived right to commit or thereby be complicit to the unlawful appropriation of the freedoms and responsibilities entrusted to the Indigenous people in good stewardship. In other words, racism is colonization, as stated in the Doctrine of Discovery. Deny us our sovereignty and you deny the dignity granted to us by the Creator. Whereas racism against newcomers is largely about Christian white Europeans' fear of new settlers disrupting the status quo, conflicts of religion, or the economic creation of competition and scarcity. And where one may witness Indigenous people perpetrating seemingly racist remarks such as "go back to your own country," they may find mere frustration over the sovereignty Canada stole and so proudly flaunts through the privilege of its citizens. Because to be honest, many of us who blurt such hurtful expressions are usually doing so in response to not only the systemic disempowerment, but to an act of racism being knowingly or unwittingly perpetrated against us at that time by your colonial or settler victim. We must watch and keep in mind racism is a mechanism in political agendas. There are remnants of wars past and tactics to divide the masses in false narratives. Racism towards ethnic groups began as wars for resources and land. I've talked to a few people who were in the military or near to, old vets and young, all said the same thing, that racism is embedded throughout their training, right out into the battlefield. My theory is that in order to condition people to kill other people, you must demonize those you want killed. Then that brainwashing for battle carries through history in grand stories of conquest. However, here on Turtle Island, we were never conquered. We were swindled. And soldiers didn't need to be conditioned to hate an enemy they've never met. All the incentive for impression was provided in the Doctrine of Discovery and its promise of prosperity. If we seriously want to solve the issues of racism, we have to first understand the history and nature of racism, and then look at it with a contextual lens today. If done right, you just might discover that in a colony founded on the subjugation of the indigenous people and theft of our entire land base, one group's fight for equal rights will always be at the expense of indigenous sovereignty and our inherent rights. Years ago, I questioned how these initiatives have progressed. And someone told me about, I think it was a female author who wrote that racism and anti-racism discourse only further to entrench the culture of racism, and that we needed another method of tackling the work. And the way I see it, the discourse on racism is the integration of new settlers into a colony of consumerism. A discourse on colonialism works to dispel white supremacy and racism as the proper roles as guest and host is realized, thus bringing peace and justice to all the realms of the indigenous peoples. I'm tired of seeing in the media, indigenous issues as riding the coattails of other movements such as climate marches and Black Lives Matter in a quaint mention in our own territories. And although many are true allies, many are not and have their own interests and agendas. And I think that play on an old saying, the strongest wolf is the one you feed the most. Anyone remember the Mice Maze Society, in which they run mice through various mazes and study them? Well, I don't recall hearing any of the highly trained mice for search and rescue missions, because these mice mazes were utilized for the study of behavioral psychology. And if you look around carefully, you'll see the results of those mice studies. They're not going to waste millions of dollars on a bunch of albino munchkin rats for nothing. I want to stop talking about racism and start talking about criminalizing white supremacy and delegitimizing the sovereignty of the colonies. Stop talking about the equal and economic rights and start recognizing indigenous sovereignty and the economic lie. For every 4 to 8 years, new policies are created and good work being undone. The colonial governance system is not the solution. It is becoming increasingly clear that only with the wisdom of indigenous people guiding Canada and indigenous laws overshadowing Canadian laws will we ever have hope of balance being restored in our nations. A couple of years ago, in a conversation with Quetzalcoatl, friend and matriarch of Camp Cloud on Burnaby Mountain, we were talking about a strategy on getting our message out. I said that we had a lot of our people still in the system, and it was the system which we needed to go. This didn't sit too well with Quetzal. And George Manuel Jr., who was sitting there, asked me what I meant. So I further explained that we needed to go into all these places, get to all our people, and get them out of the colonial system mindset and back into the indigenous way of knowing. And that's what I try to do. I go into a lot of these places that discuss organizational policies, community initiatives, municipal policies, and all these game-changing initiatives in an attempt to get people to come to the dark brown side and away from the white. And oftentimes my methods are not well received, as my tone can be off-putting. But I do what I do and how I do it for many reasons. One is my sovereignty. There are so many false narratives out there with the political most prevalent. Like when they say free, prior, and informed consent does not equate to an indigenous veto, which obviously it does if you understand any English. That's colonization, and that's where racism starts. Then there are the demonizing Muslims to protect the religious practice of Christian white supremacy, or attacking Chinese people because of an industrial created virus. It's how we tell the story that either creates or destroys racism. If we have to get as loud and unforgettable as possible with the truth, because a lot don't want to hear it, and they just want to hear the version that justifies their place in society. Whatever you do, don't shut off your pain. Accept your pain and remain vulnerable. However desperate you become, don't shut off your pain because it is in fact trying to hand you a precious gift. The chance of discovery through spiritual practice, what lies behind sorrow. Don't we know, and only far too well, that protection from pain doesn't work. And when we try and defend ourselves from suffering, we only suffer more and don't learn what we can from experience. And that was from the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, that little paragraph there. You know, the whole colonial system and much of our discourse on a new paradigm shift seems to be largely centered on a colonizing narrative. It is only by breaking away from this narrative and bring the doctrine of discovery into our circles should we move forward. And while everyone is talking about rescinding this doctrine, we need to talk about the papal encyclical Sublimis Dei as well, which brings into the call the legitimacy of the colonies and their laws. First, I'll share a portion of the Pope Nicholas's bull of 1452, and then a paragraph from the encyclical book Sublimis Dei. Hang on. Okay, here's that 1452 Doctrine of Discovery. Invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ, wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate them to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. I was from Pope Nicholas in 1452. And then in 1537, Pope Paul III wrote, and this is in regards to the enslavement and evangelization of Indians. I just want to read one part of it. We who, though unworthy, exercise on earth the power of our Lord and seek with all our might to bring those sheep of his flock who are outside into the fold committed to our change. Consider, however, that the Indians are truly men, and they are not only capable of understanding the Catholic faith, but according to our information, they desire exceedingly to receive it. Desiring to provide ample remedy for these evils, we define and declare by these our letters, or by any translation thereof, signed by any notary public and sealed with the seal of the ecclesiastical dignitary, blah, 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 to which the same credit. Notwithstanding whatever may have been or may be said to the contrary, the said Indians and all the people who may later be discovered by Christians are by no means to be deprived of their liberty or their possessions of their property, even though they may be outside the faith of Jesus Christ, and they may and should freely and legitimately enjoy their liberty and the possession of their property, nor should they be in any way enslaved. Should the contrary happen, it shall be null and have no effect. It basically means, by my understanding, Canada and the US are illegitimate entities. Now, even though many say Sublimis Dei was rescinded 1 year later due to the pressure of the Spanish Empire, further study says it was not. What was rescinded were sanctions put out in an accompanying letter to Christians employing the doctrine of discovery to subjugate our people and steal our properties. The pastorale officium. But most importantly, Sublimis Dei does lay down a clear dialogue from which we can employ our work. And remember, doing social justice work in a good way does not mean an easy or comfortable way. And be careful, your judiciary fight for equal rights and prosperity just might be in the context of the ongoing subjugation of Indigenous peoples, as well as the health and well-being of all life. And I think we'll end it with that. Yeah, I'm done.
Awesome, Johnny. There's lots of comments and how articulate and how, how thank you for speaking truth. So thank you for that. We do, Johnny, there was a question about the documentary you referenced. I think you said you were working on a documentary. Do you want to share any more about that at all?
Yeah, sure. It was to talk about the impacts of the doctrine of discovery. It's for the Christian Reformed Church, particularly the mustard seed. I'm writing the script for it. I'm almost done, pretty much done the script. Hopefully it'll be done in a month or so. I don't know how long editing is going to take or whatnot, more filming, but I'm excited about it. I tried not to get too much of what I put in there into here, but there's a little bit of overlap. But it's going to be pretty interesting, I tell you. I hope so. I hope it's going to be.
Thank you. Gina says, thank you, Johnny. I felt that deep in the core of my being. I'm now following you on social media, so the word needs to hear your words. Melody, I had a question for you earlier in relation to the Anti-Racism Council at the provincial level. When has it met? How frequently? Is it active?
We have met twice. After our first meeting, we had the provincial election, and so there was a lot of changes with the new government coming in. We do have a meeting this Saturday where we are going to hopefully start working on some of the issues that we see within our government and our society. My thing is I keep pushing hate incidents, and I'm just going to keep pushing them.
Right. Thank you, Melody. Okay, so I'm just going to check the time. We're at 3:25. I'm thinking we could probably... Oh, and Chantal is asking, I think this is for you, Johnny. Do you have a Kickstarter or GoFundMe to help expedite your film?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do have a GoFundMe to help me in my work, but no, I don't have one for the documentary itself. It's already, the grant money just came in, and so hopefully we're going to start refilming again in a week or so.
That's awesome. All right. There's been some, Sanders put some books in there. There's also some comments of films in that in the text, but I think given that it's 3:25 and I recognize we had till 3:30, I'm wondering, I think everybody on here, honestly, really honest, brutal conversation. I felt in so many ways that we just needed to be together for this one so that we could, all of us are wanting to move this conversation so much further ahead. And so the trick will be for us to keep doing that. Rocky, I'm just wondering if I could pass it back to you, kind of closing.
Yes, Renee, I'm here. Okay, so I just wanted to say a few more things. So our skin color, our language, our foods that we eat, the culture we practice should not be seen as a reason for racist attitudes, remarks, and actions against one another. This should be seen as an opportunity to learn from one another. We're all teachers, we're all experts in our lives, we're all special, we're all treaty people. So we need to appreciate that we're here for one purpose, become one nation, live side by side in harmony, provide comfort, education, respect, and love for one another. And the 9-4 calls to action, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that because we probably, you've probably read a lot and heard a lot about that. And so it's a means for us as individuals to build a bridge and close the gap between all nations, all cultures, all individuals. We need to take responsibility for our actions and do good. It takes one person at a time to make a better Canada. And as I've said before, we're all one race. The human race, we're all treaty people. And I had looked at some of the calls for action, the 94 calls for action, and there was 3 that I'm going to just go briefly on if we have time. So how do we as treaty people reduce the number of Indigenous children in care? By doing this, we're continuing to support the culture of each child by allowing them to be immersed in their own culture and being proud of who they are, and they can become healthy and productive citizens instead of being a strain and a drain on our community. And we can all participate in that. We should be building up the family structure, thereby having the support and resources within the family who is the expert in the family. The end result would be less drugs, alcohol, less treatment centers, less incarceration, and the list goes on and on. And education, this is everybody's responsibility. We're all responsible in ensuring that we are part of the education that our children, our grandchildren, our future leaders are receiving. Phone your educational system and see what is being taught. Go to the schools, the colleges, universities, and provide your expertise. And sometimes we think that the education system is already there and it's not for us to go in and provide the expertise that we all have, the knowledge that we all have. It's our responsibility as treaty people, as human beings, to go in there and provide that support to the schools. Health. If Indigenous health is not addressed in a cultural, respectful and proper manner, this affects us all. The healthcare system is already strained and bursting at the seams, lacking in funding. Hospitals are closing down in some of the smaller communities. Hospitals will remain full. Doctors will continue to be overbooked. Long waits for operations. Prescriptions will continue to be prescribed rather than the real concerns being addressed. And some of my TRC actions are, I do something every single day, whether it's letting someone in traffic in front of me that they're in a rush, or helping someone in the shopping center. I'll help someone put their groceries in their car. Sometimes they look at me like, oh, you're Indigenous, you're gonna steal my groceries. But I just say, okay, that's okay. I don't take offense to that. I clean my community. I go around and I pick up garbage in my community. I say hello to everybody. I smile at everybody. It's just little things that we can do to build that, to bridge that gap, to build a bridge where we can all work together. And I mean, I shovel sidewalks for people that I don't even know. I rake someone's lawn, but if it's someone I don't know, I ask them permission, and I do that. Reading a reputable book on a different culture, asking sincere and respectful questions about someone's culture. Sometimes we think if someone is from a different culture, that if we ask them, tell me about your culture, they're going to be like, oh, you want to know about my culture? That's disrespectful. No, people like to talk about their culture, and people like to educate. So, I mean, it could be different, like it could be Cree, it could be Ojibwe Cree, it could be any culture. Like we need to, like I keep saying, we need to close that gap. We need to build a bridge. We need to become one nation. We need to become one race, the human race, because we are all treaty people. And sometimes we forget. We see the color of the skin, we see the race, we see the culture. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Rocky. Okay, well, that brings us to an end of the session. And I know there's a lot of comments going on about, and I'm just thinking thank you so much for all the resources everybody's posting in there. I'll put that in a list and I'll send it to everybody. So what I'll do is I'll follow up. I'm going to send you an email with those resources, with a link to the YouTube video with this, so you can share it out to anybody you know for the conversations. But there'll also be a little survey in there, and it's a really simple 1-question survey, because a lot of you are saying this conversation needs to continue. Well, we need to understand how we do that moving forward, or what you can see. And so it's just a really tight survey. Just get any of your thoughts, because we need to speak up and we need to work together. And as much as it's hard sometimes, I think it's so critical. And I really appreciate the honesty of our speakers today. And I'll look forward to hopefully seeing many more of you soon. Chantel's saying weekly. Wow, are we ready? Okay. All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the Coalition's Creating Equity Edmonton team, I just want to say thank you so much. And we will see you hopefully again soon. And now people want to chat. I don't know.
Bye, everybody.